Hello, my friends. It's great to be back in the United States. It's great to be back once again engaging in dialogue with our sacred texts. And yes, for the many of you who have asked, Angkor Wat in Cambodia totally lived up to its reputation as one of the most significant human-made wonders in our world. It was breathtaking in its spiritual richness, in its demonstration of human genius, in the power of its capacity to survive wars, human depredation, and the assaults of nature. When Risa and I first glimpsed this sacred location, what were we going to do? We were overwhelmed. We recited CHAYYE because that's what Jews do at times like that. Our reactions to Vietnam were far more complicated and nuanced. We'll save that for another time. Our Sedra, Genesis 23:1, CHAYYE SARAH, the life of Sarah. What we begin with is the life of Sarah. Sarah dies. Abraham buys a burial place, the burial of Sarah. The text initiates a discussion, a little bit of Sarah's life, but right now, I'd like to focus on Isaac, who pops up again near the end of the Sedra. Now, we have 4 matriarchs, 3 patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. Think back for a moment. We know a great deal about Abraham, his physical and spiritual journey from paganism and idolatry into what we now would call monotheism, his arguments with God, his attempt to sacrifice his son, Isaac, his banishing of Hagar and Ishmael. We also know a great deal about Jacob, his cheating of Esau, his tricking of his blind father, Isaac, his favoring of Joseph, his grief over Joseph's reported death, then his meeting with Pharaoh and reestablishing his life in Goshen in the land of Egypt. What about Isaac, the middle patriarch, the son of a patriarch, the father of a patriarch? What do we actually know in the Torah about Isaac? Actually, we don't know much at all. He was the long-awaited son of Abraham and Sarah. Fine. His father tried to sacrifice him to God. Not so fine. Then he just climbed down from the altar, left Mount Moriah, and disappeared. And then suddenly in our Sedra, it was time for him to marry, and he agreed to marry Rivka, a near relative who was selected for him by Abraham's servant. And then, as a blind old man, he was tricked by Rebekah and Jacob into giving his main blessing to Jacob and not to his favored son, Esau. So if this were all that we had, how would we describe Isaac? Passive, really passive, painfully passive. And that's a funny description for someone who was about to become one of the 3 foundational fathers, patriarchs, of our people. Either understanding or misunderstanding God's intentions, Abraham feels compelled to tie Isaac to an altar and to sacrifice him to God. Isaac's response at this moment seems to be something very close to my words. And Isaac jumped up onto the altar, held out his arms, and asked his father, "Please tie me down." This is a seriously passive person. Abraham sacrifices a ram in place of Isaac and then goes home. He goes home without Isaac. Where is Isaac? We don't know. In the Torah text, he's gone. He disappears. Despite the unspeakable trauma that he had just experienced, he seems to have just wandered off somewhere into the wilderness. Did I say passive? Yeah. Now Isaac is old, really old. He loves the way that his rough and tumble older son Esau takes care of him. But then at a critical moment, When Jacob disguises himself so as to wrest the parental blessing from Esau, Jacob does notice that something's wrong. You sound like Jacob. Your hands, arms feel hairy like Esau. Confused, concerned. What does Isaac do? Nothing. He blesses Jacob, and when Esau later bitterly complains, Jacob makes up another blessing but does nothing to correct his error. Passive. Did I say passive? Painfully passive. The rabbis aren't going to let such matters stand. They let loose their creative talents and invent some additional segments for Isaac's life. The rabbis felt that there were some crucial components missing from Isaac's CV as a prospective patriarch. Let's see what those components were. Isaac disappeared after almost being sacrificed. Got that. Where did he go? Well, he went to a yeshiva. Where else would well-raised Jewish kids go? The rabbis placed Isaac into their world. So they invented a yeshiva and announced that one of the sons of Noah actually had established that yeshiva. So what do we know from the rabbis? Isaac devoted himself to the study of Torah in the yeshiva established by Shem. A fit and proper patriarch needed a fit and proper Jewish education in the yeshiva. So now Isaac was to get precisely that. Now, more. A patriarch needs compassion. So where did Isaac go after the Akedah? Well, before the yeshiva, he went to find Hagar, Sarah's handmaid who bore Abraham's first son, Ishmael. Now, where he found Hagar is of great interest to Muslim scholars, since Hagar is the mother of Ishmael, and Ishmael is regarded as the biological predecessor of Muhammad. Hagar is believed by Muslim scholars to have fled to what is now Saudi Arabia, to a place very close to the central geographic focus of Muslim worship, the Kaaba. In fact, part of Hagar's journey has become the template for the activities of the Hajj, the sacred pilgrimage that every Muslim is expected to make. But the rabbis have a different geography in mind. Hagar was, in fact, they say, living somewhere in the Negev. Isaac had been severely traumatized by the events surrounding the Akedah. It's reasonable. And in his pain, the rabbis say, he discovered a deep wellspring of understanding of Hagar's pain. Isaac had never thought before about what it must have felt like for Hagar and Ishmael to have been expelled from the tents of Abraham. Isaac went to find Hagar, to reunite with her, and to bring her back to his father, who was just recently bereaved because of the death of Sarah. Lesson 2, a patriarch needs compassion. And finally, number 3, the rabbis added one final piece to the construction of Isaac as a worthy foundational figure. Isaac had to be brought into the living history of the Jewish people. He needed to reconnect to his past, and he needed to firmly connect to his people's future. Yes, it was Abraham's servant who found Rebekah and arranged for her to meet Isaac. But once Isaac approved of her, what did he do? He brought, according to the Torah, Rebekah into the tent of Sarah. Symbolically, he brought her into the history of our people that had begun with Abraham. He brought her into the promises, the covenants, the experiences, the dreams that would shape our future. No mere piece of driftwood, this Isaac. Isaac had moved with great intention to take his place in the shaping of the Jewish future. Isaac came down off of that altar and headed out to complete his preparations to become a patriarch. He went to yeshiva because no Jewish community can ever survive without possessing a depth of understanding of traditional Jewish texts. He went to embrace Hagar as an act of compassion because leaders must be able to feel the pain of others. And he brought his wife in as a full partner in creating a people that would tell the stories of Abraham and Sarah and Isaac and Rebekah and Jacob, Rachel and Leah, forever. So, my friends, you might have thought that Isaac was just a very passive person in the stories in Genesis. But the rabbis shaped him into a role model for hundreds of generations to come, maybe even as a role model for us. Have a wonderful Shabbat. We'll see you next week. Shabbat Shalom.